Has your dream RV turned into a nightmare? Well, let's talk about some of the issues with the RV industry in this episode of Travels with Delaney. Welcome back, everyone. My name's Patrick, and if this is your first time here at Travels with Delaney, welcome. We're your channel all about RVing and living life to the fullest. In this episode, I thought we would take a look at some of the issues plaguing the RV industry. And a lot of these issues date back for years. But this year, they're going to be amplified because so many people have bought RVs this year. And so what they thought was going to be their dream RV turns into a complete nightmare for them. And it can really become frustrating. So I wanted to look at a few things that I think are part of the problem with the RV industry. You may wonder what gives me credibility to talk about issues with the RV industry. No, I haven't actually worked in an RV manufacturing facility, but I have owned 10 RVs over the last 15 years, and I'm a professor of business administration, and I teach courses in management and quality. So let's dive right into three main issues that I see with the RV industry. And we're going to start with the idea that a RV manufacturer actually assembles the RV. There's parts of that process that they can control, and there are some really good manufacturers out there in terms of putting together RVs and what they can control. A good example is this beautiful Lance travel trailer that I'm currently sitting in that we just purchased back in June. The actual construction of the trailer is outstanding. It's a 4-season trailer, it's well insulated, and it's just really well built from what we can tell. But the downside to this trailer and so many RVs that are out on the road is RV manufacturers rely on suppliers. And one of the first issues I think there is a problem with the supply chain. And until the RV industry actually starts demanding higher quality products from their suppliers, there are going to be ongoing issues with your RVs. For instance, screws falling out of an oven cover, a slide out that doesn't actually go out, cover to an awning motor that blows off going down the road, a water heater that won't light, a drawer that won't close. You get the idea. Now, most of these issues that we're having are pretty minor and can be fixed quite easily, although the slide out is a much bigger issue for our particular trailer. But all of these things add up and they cause frustration. We spent over $40,000 for this trailer and we started having issues within the first couple weeks. So what is the solution? Well, again, a lot of these issues have nothing to do with Lance's actual construction of the trailer. It has to do with the parts that they installed in this. And this is a trend we've seen over several trailers we've owned over the last few years. Many times the construction is good, but the component parts are the issue. Now, the auto industry really upped their quality years ago, and one of the ways they did it was they started requiring very specific things from their distributors for component parts. And I think the RV industry is going to have to do the same, because unfortunately, a lot of the issues we're having has nothing to do with the manufacturer, but it looks bad on the manufacturer. The second major issue I see starts at the dealership level. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some amazing RV dealerships out there that are going to take care of you from the time you purchase your RV all the way through the ownership of that RV. But sadly, there are a lot of dealerships out there that mainly focus on the sales side and really don't want to be bothered with the service aspect. And a lot of times you can tell those because they've got several hundred RVs on their lot and they have one service bay. Well, how are you ever going to get your RV in if they only have that one service bay? So what we've seen over our years of experience is a lot of times we will go and call the dealership and say, hey, we're having an issue. And they'll be like, well, we'll go ahead and get you an appointment for a month from now. Or in our current situation, we're dealing locally with an RV service center. And because they are so backed up on warranty claims, we're waiting 2 months to get our slide out fixed. So we really need, what we see in the auto industry is we need dealerships that understand that part of what they do is they sell cars, in this case RVs, but the other side is they service them. And they need to service them whether they actually sold it to you or not. Good example, I bought my current Toyota Tundra out in Butte, Montana. When I called up the Toyota dealership locally, they didn't ask me, did you buy it here? And I've gotten that before on RVs, where when you go in, the dealership will actually say, did you buy it here? And if you say no, they'll say like, well, I don't know when we'll be able to get to you. And you would be appalled if you called up your Chevy dealership and they asked you if you had bought it there and you were needing service. So I think the RV manufacturers are going to have to really be working with these dealerships to say, if you're going to sell our brand of RV, you're going to service all of them regardless of whether you sold it to them or not. Because ultimately the warranty work's going to pay the same. It's not like the manufacturer is going to say, well, we'll pay you more if it's one of your customers versus a customer from another RV dealership. So we really need to get to a point where we can get our RVs in a timely basis to be repaired and not have to worry about where we bought it. Because a lot of times you may have bought it, let's say in Florida, and then you relocate to another state. You shouldn't be penalized for that. Ultimately, one of my real complaints about RVs is we invest a lot of money in these, whether we buy a $10,000 RV or a $150,000 RV or more. And when you have to wait 2 months to use that, well, in some climates like here in the Midwest, that's a good chunk of the camping season. And if the issue is so bad that you can't use your RV anymore, well, you're just paying on basically a piece of nothing. So can you imagine if you bought an automobile and within the first month of ownership you had some issues with it, if they told you it would be a month or 2 months before they could get you in to see it? So I think the area of service is going to have to be something that the RV industry really looks at. I don't necessarily have answers for them completely, but I do think they really need to start working with those dealerships. In fact, I've always said dealerships are one of the weakest links in the entire RV industry, because a company like New Camp can make a really high quality trailer, but they need quality dealerships who are going to service them when there are issues. And honestly, there's going to be issues on these. But it's how quickly we can get them taken care of that's going to ultimately determine just how frustrated we are as owners. The last area that I think the RV industry needs to really work on is what I call the warranty gap. Now, I'm not sure if that's the appropriate terminology, but let me try to explain to you what I'm talking about. If I need to take my car in for service, number one, they get me in really quick. And number two, once they diagnose the problem, they're immediately able to fix it. And if it's covered under warranty, it's covered under warranty. In the past, when we've had issues with RVs, not only do we have to wait forever to get them in typically, but then they are required to go through so much red tape at the dealership just to get an approval to fix an obvious problem. And I've talked to dealerships who say it actually is annoying for them because they know it's wrong, they know the part's bad, but they cannot do anything on your trailer until they get the approvals from the manufacturer. And sometimes that can take hours and days or longer for them. And so I think the RV manufacturers need to set up a system with repair centers and dealerships to where, number one, we've got to get customers in quicker. And number two, we've got to trust those service centers to know what needs to be done and get it corrected. And then thirdly, one of the complaints I've heard from dealers and service centers is sometimes they just don't get paid for warranty work in a timely basis. And I don't blame them for being reluctant to take in RVs for warranty work if they think they're not going to get paid. So there's this gap between the warranty and executing the warranty. And I just don't seem to see that with the auto industry. Again, I've taken things in before on my cars. They tell me it's a warranty issue. A few hours later, I'm rolling away, problem fixed, and I'm not without my car. And in the one case that I remember where one of my trucks had to be in the shop for a few days, the dealership actually offered me a loaner vehicle so that I could still get to and from work. Now with the RV, if your RV's in a dealership lot for weeks, they're not offering you a loaner trailer. And I think that's bad because, again, we're paying big dollars for these RVs. And depending on where you live, you may have a limited amount of time during the year due to the weather to actually use them. And nothing more frustrating or depressing than spending thousands of dollars and not being able to use what you bought. So are there simple solutions to making the RV industry better? Well, I think there is. Again, I think if they would work with the supply chain to make sure they're getting in quality component parts that we don't have to have breaking the first trip out, that's going to help tremendously. I also think if they work with their dealerships and build a better dealership network and explain what's expected of a dealer in terms of covering warranties, that's going to help. And thirdly, I really believe they have to work to expand nationwide coverage of service centers where people can actually get their RVs in and get them worked on, and do it in a timely basis so that we're not investing big bucks in our trailers and not being able to use them. Have you bought a trailer at some point and you've been frustrated because it didn't work right out of the gate or shortly after you purchased it? Let me know your frustrations and what you think about where the RV industry needs to go in the future. Till next time, everybody, we'll see ya on down the road. Good night.